Hello, everyone, and thank you for listening to the Facilities and Focus podcast. My name is Mackenna Moralez, and I'm the Associate Editor of Facilitiesnet and also your host today. I am very excited because I am joined by one of our 2024 facility champions, Cat Antenucci. Kat is originally from New York and graduated from Maritime College in the Bronx and with a U.S. Coast Guard engineering license and degree. While at school, she worked in the engine room aboard commercial ships. She began her Marriott, uh, it's one of the two, career in 2019 as an engineering voyager at the Renaissance Orlando at SeaWorld. In September 2020, mid pandemic, Kat started her role at Harbor Beach as chief engineer. After 2 years of hard work and dedication, she was promoted to assistant director of engineering. But thank you so much for joining me today, Kat. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited and, it feels really good.
Oh, good. I'm glad that you could be here. It's always nice being able to catch up with you. But as I mentioned in the introduction, you were named one of 2024's facility champions. The award is currently open for 2025 nominations, and to our listeners, you can find all that information on how to nominate a facility champion in the show notes. But how did it feel to get that recognition?
It feels truly, as corny as it sounds, like honored to get it because, as a facilities manager, maintaining the building and structure on the property, there's a lot that we go into day and night that a lot of focus, a lot of time, a lot of energy that goes into it. And it's stuff that we don't expect to get thanked for because it's what we're expected to do and it's just part of our job. But it felt really good to get recognized for it and to at least see that my leaders and colleagues appreciate that and see all the effort that I'm putting into taking care of our property.
Right. And I don't mean to be rude, but you are fairly young as
Yes, I
well.
think that's very fair to say. Yes.
Like, I know that this is an audio medium, but to our listeners, Kat and I are probably around the same age, I would assume. But it, how does it feel to have this recognition so early on in your career too?
It feels like very fortunate because I know I'm, at least especially compared to others in Marriott and to the discipline, I'm very green, but I don't think that really stands for the knowledge, what I bring to the table, how much I can absorb. So I know there's a ton of information and learnings that I've taken over the past about 5.5 years with Marriott. And I'm really truthfully grateful because that allows me to rise up to, I'm not going to say compete, but, you know, be up to that level as some of these same directors or chiefs who've been with Marriott in the discipline for quite some time. And so I can actually level up and just be seen as a peer, be able to, provide the same amount of knowledge, and just be able to take care of the property the same way they do. So, and I think that also goes to tell about how much I learned in school and with my Coast Guard license, all the trainings that came with that for mechanically. So that was
Mhm.
my strong suit. That brought me up to speed big time. So once I got into a hotel, I joke with my friends that a hotel is just the same as a ship. We have chillers, we got boilers, air conditioning. The only difference is ships are self-generated as far as power and water generation, and we just get it from the city on land. But it's all the same mechanical structure, background knowledge that you'll need to know, and it's swapped over. I'm going to say pretty easily.
Yeah. This might sound like a silly question just because you mentioned the Coast Guard. Did you serve
I
that?
did not. I personally do not consider the merchant marine a branch of the military. I know there are people who do, but I personally do not. Um, so no, I don't consider that serving.
Okay. It just seems like you are claiming space in a room that's often filled with men in your life.
I think that's absolutely true. And especially in maritime college, there's about 90% men. And I think I was one of maybe, I'm going to say 20 women in my class. And then of that 20 women, only about maybe less than a dozen were engineering side of it.
Right.
So primarily maritime, you got split between deck and engine, and that's how we split between what license we were pursuing. Um, but even having those dozen girls in the class, that allowed us to create just a sense of togetherness,
Mhm.
and that we are able to, I'm not gonna say overlook, but you didn't realize, and it didn't matter that we were only 5 to 10% of our class. Truthfully, it didn't matter because then that allowed us to get used to being around men with just like we can take anything you throw at us. It's like you want
Right.
to judge us, you want to, I don't know, just undervalue us, think it, but it's not true, and I don't think it affected me. I think that really prepared me for, this discipline, especially in hospitality. So it didn't feel like anything. And as much as some people joke or saying, "Oh my God, the women engineering," I'm like, yeah, so what about it? It
Right.
feels so normal that I don't ever see a difference. And
Mhm.
it feels just like another day.
It's nice that you started it at such a young age too, that it is truly like all you know about it. It's not jarringly different compared to any other industry, I guess, if that makes sense.
No, it's absolutely the same. I'm going to say the basics. Just like people saying adding and subtraction is the basics to math, it feels like knowing the technical knowledge, exactly how electrical power works, how generation works, how chillers, boilers, once you learn those, you're able to kind of piece together and how they interlock together, how one affects another, on how it sometimes help how I learned it because then I can help others learn it. Um,
Right.
And I think that's kind of how I got into it. So I have 2 older brothers, and so
Okay.
they both went to maritime, and so they're both engineers as well, and I remember them coming home from college, like, on some weekends, and we would just be talking about what they're learning in class at the dinner
Mhm.
table, like, I remember one specifically, it was about, like, boilers. So our degrees aren't typical engineering degrees, so with the Coast Guard license, we had very hands-on classes. So like we took classes on refrigeration, pumps and motors, can't remember if I said refrigeration, but diesels and just more stuff that's very ship focused.
Right.
So I remember them coming back, just starting to talk about boilers and how they do blowdowns and how you'd have the burners and you have to manually take out and pull the burners. And it was just that got me very interested before I even was able to apply to colleges, when really looking at colleges was almost not even, I'm not gonna say like on the table, because I was maybe a freshman to sophomore in high school when they started
Right.
throwing their courses at me. And I remember my mom would be like, "Can we talk about something different at the table? Like, I don't know what you guys are talking about." And
Right.
but it got me very interested, and especially after seeing, they would take pictures, so each summer at school, it's a part of our degree that we sail on the ship for the summer and actually
Mhm.
work the engine room of the ship. So we did classes on the ship, we did day work, and then we did watch rotations. And that provided so much knowledge that, looking back, it seemed like, I didn't get to hang out with my friends on the summers, because I'd be on a ship. And
Right.
but yes, the ship did get to go to some very cool ports that, I may
Mhm.
not have been able to see on my own, but it made what at the time seemed so important of wanting to hang out with friends and just enjoy the summer, go to the beach. It it really set you up for, I'm gonna say set you up for life. And they would joke that maritime, it was, you get to see your friends partying like a rock star and they have to work hard the rest of their life. And it's like, yeah, we'd work hard in the
Right.
summer and then we could just party the rest of the time. There's always time for partying, but there's only a certain amount of time where you can really get all this hands-on knowledge. And, because how many opportunities do you have to work on a ship and get all that knowledge?
Right. That is crazy. That what a crazy experience. I didn't realize that's how your career started out. Do you think having this degree sets you apart from some people who might not have gone to school?
I'm gonna say yes and no to a way because there's a lot of my peers in Marriott who don't some of them don't even have a degree. They worked their way up the Marriott Hawes-Pipe that they started from a Tech 1 and they learned and they developed and they're a director now.
Right.
So I'm going to say, does it set me apart? Yeah, I think it expedited my learning, absolutely.
Mhm.
But I don't think it makes me any better or worse than my peers. I just think it set me on an accelerated path um,
Yeah.
that really forced me to take it all in. And it was definitely challenging. I'm not going to undersell that. It was tough. Um, but it forced you to just be fully engulfed in it. And I'm
Mhm.
not going to say it was a sink or swim situation, but there's a lot of kids who don't make it past maritime. They don't, it's a tough curriculum. It's demanding. You need to balance. Like, I think our total degree, I think what maybe was about 160, 170 credits. And
Right.
over 4 years, that is a very demanding load.
It is.
And even I was able to manage that and, you know, um, like volleyball and lacrosse. So that even made it more challenging, but worth it in the end. It's like I still got to have somewhat of a normal college experience, still able to do
Yeah.
the sports that I love, um, and balance it with a tough curriculum. So does it set me apart, making it better? I don't think so, but I think it prepared me. It's like life is going to be tough, you're constantly going to be provided with challenges. So I think it just prepared me for all of that.
Well, I think it's a good way to put it, and it also sounds like it really built your confidence too, instead of just going into a job and be like, I don't really know how to do these things, and then having to get like mentored and stuff. You already had that experience in school.
No, absolutely. And I even joke around with this one all the time that I get that I'm a young female here, and
Mhm.
that definitely takes people to shock, at least at face value. Um,
Right.
and I'll always tell how when I first got to this property at Harbor Beach, um, obviously it quickly went around amongst the hotel. It's like, oh my God, there's a young girl who is your new boss.
Oh,
And it it was quite funny. And I finally got to meet not finally, but when I met one of the guys, he just came back, during the pandemic, it was strange. So we had people come back at different times, as the
right.
hotel got more in occupancy, more into normalness or a sense of normalcy. And this
Right.
one guy came back off furlough and he goes, I heard about you. And I said, oh, yeah. I'm like, he said, I just heard that there's a young female who's my new boss. And I said, okay. And what are you going to do about it? I kind of
No.
said just like that. And he was like, well, and you could see like he was looking, he was questioning. And I was like, you want to ask me questions, don't you? Like, you
Yeah.
want to quiz me. I see it. And he
Right.
straight up went, he's like, yeah, I do. And I said, go for it. Let's go.
Good for
And
you.
because that's just the comments, like, I know my stuff. But then if they're never going to ask me questions, especially right there, why prolong it? I need them to
Mhm.
know that they can trust me, that I have
Right.
the answers if they don't. So I let him at it. He only asked about maybe 5 questions, and they all went, I'm gonna say relatively quick, but smoothly. And he's
Yeah.
asking, he goes, okay, goes, I like you. He's like, you got them
Nice.
all. He's like, you got them all right. And I was like, okay, do you have any other questions or can we get back to work? And
Right. And like I understand it's an earning respect part, but how do you not get mad when that happens?
I get mad when there's no respect behind it. And I don't say mad as in mad, but that's when the frustration comes when you're being talked to. Again, I don't, obviously I command respect. If I give you respect, I'm expecting it back. But you can tell he was asking from a respectful place.
Right.
He's like, you're my new boss. I need to see what you know. Um,
Mhm.
because again, if he's been at the property for 14 years, he knows stuff about the property that it's going to take me a year to learn.
Right.
So, and that's where I come and I appreciate the questioning, and he'll even talk about it now. So he's still here, and he'll even talk about. He goes, and he is one of my biggest supporters. If
Oh,
anyone
that's great.
actually has a problem with me, I'm going to say being a woman, but we did have a vendor come in who kept insisting I was his secretary.
Oh my
And
God.
I would keep telling us, I'm like, excuse me, no, I'm, at the time I was the chief engineer. I said, no, I'm the chief engineer. I'm like, you've been dealing with me for the past year. And I've been giving you all the electrical rooms, all the directions, um, you know, telling you where items are, what problems we're having with, and he just kept saying, I don't know if he was saying it to be rude or just to get under the skin. And yes, it got under my skin a bit, but it's
Like, how
just,
could it not?
yeah, but it felt really, it felt really good that, my guy, so the one who quizzed me the first day that he met me, he was the first one to go. He goes, if you call her a secretary one more time, he's like, you need to understand she's not. And because at the time I walked away, I was like, I got other stuff. I'm like, I got bigger things to handle than you insisting I'm a secretary. Um, but then he did it again, and then I actually walked back in the room as he did it again. I'm like, really? I said, you know what? You can leave. I said, I don't need you on property. And
Right.
I just sent him back. But creating that trust, even from the beginning, letting them challenge me, that gives them that respect for me. That gives them that trust. And that's what I was kind of going back to. It's like if they can trust me, I can trust them.
Right.
And so having him trust me backs up my knowledge that being a female, I'm not gonna say has nothing to do with the job, but it's like that's just a fact. That's not
Yeah.
anything that's gonna affect my job, that's gonna affect my workload, it's not gonna affect the way I perform.
Mhm.
And that really, I think that really proved the trust that he was able to back me up, even when I wasn't there,
Right.
in a way.
If you can joke around with them a little bit, that also helps earn the trust too. Are you short?
I am very short. I am 5'2".
Okay. I'm 4'11", so now we got a whole bunch of shorties on the podcast. But I also kind of feel that way of sometimes I feel like I have to prove myself even more because I am just a small person in general. And then, like, granted, I'm a writer, I'm not an engineer. I can't imagine how, like, even your stature plays in a role in that because they're like, "Oh, you little bitty thing. What do you know?" And like you say, a lot. Quiz me.
Hmm. And that's what I mean. Like it, and that's why, if people just come up to me, they're like, what if they try to challenge you? What if they try to just be a pester? And it's like, if they want to ask questions, let them, like if it's at least, I'm gonna say relevant, if they're gonna ask me stupid questions, that aren't relevant to our work, then, that I'm gonna dismiss. I'm gonna say, hey, that's not appropriate, that's not relevant, like we're not talking about that. But,
Mhm.
and, that's something that my director has always supported me on. He's like, I love the way you take it. He goes, if someone wants to challenge you, you say, go right ahead because I have nothing to hide. I'm confident in myself. And if it just helps
Mhm.
my team get confidence in me, then absolutely. And
Right.
to take what, 5 minutes of answering some questions, if that, um, but it got to the point, and then they'll all talk to each other like, okay, she knows her stuff. Like, we're good. Um,
Right.
but at least as far as being short, they all know that. And if they want to do short jokes on me, they know I'm gonna be the first one to do it. I'm the first one to say, I'm gonna need a ladder for this. Like, are you kidding me? And even today, we're doing something. We're actually helping just move some items out of like a beverage cooler so that we can replace the evaporator in a walk-in cooler. And I'm
Mhm.
getting stuff off the top shelf, and I'm actually like practically on my tippy toes, just getting stuff. And one of my guys, who's probably about like 6'2", he just looked. He goes, "Cat," and he's like, "Just let me." And I go, "You know what? Yeah, you're right." I'm like, "You're tall." I'm like, "Get the heck in there." I'm like, "What am I doing?"
Right.
Um,
Why strain myself? Why almost injure myself when someone can just like lift their arm up?
Correct. And it's so fun because they do it in such a respectful way. And I think that's what gives me the comfort that being a woman, I can still play with the big guns, like it
Mhm.
doesn't feel any different. And they're like, we know you can do it, but you don't have to, you know.
Right.
And they're like, if you want to, go right ahead, but just know you don't have to. Like we can do this for you. And I think the biggest joke that my guys like is I'll be carrying a ladder and
Mhm.
I make the joke and I said, if it's 6 feet or under, I said, just let me carry it. I'm like, but if it's over 6 feet, go ahead. You can absolutely take that from me. Cause they'll be like, Cat, just give me the ladder. And I go, okay. I'm like, you're not to ask twice. Sure.
Right.
Cause they're like, we know you can do it, but you don't have to.
Right.
Um,
That's a
and
nice way to look at it too, of just like knowing your own limits, I guess, because like you don't want to run anything, you don't want to hurt yourself either.
no, and I don't even consider like hurt myself. It's more of just, I think they think of it as, you can, but you don't have to. They know I'm a leader. They know that there's a lot more on my plate than they see. So if they're like,
Mhm.
if we can take this easy task from her, then she can, she'll either trust us with the rest of the task or just, get over it, guide us through it, whatever. Um, but at least as far as strength, there's just so many times where I'm carrying like if I carry something, they're like, oh, okay. And they'll joke and be like, oh, Cat's muscles are out, and it's just kind of funny that way. But they'll always go, they're like, is it, or something, I'll pick something up and it's unexpectedly heavy. I'm like, oh, yeah, no, you guys can carry this. I was like, absolutely not. I'm like,
I'm not gonna strain my back today.
no, like there was one time I was carrying a TV just by myself and it was a 55. So it's a very average size TV for a hotel. And it was just the way I picked it up and I could feel it. And I was like, you know what? I have someone else right here. I'm like, can you put that up? I'm like, instead of me trying to get it to my knee to mount it back up on the wall, I'm like, can you do this? Or like, we could do it together. I'm just like, there's no
Right.
need to risk anything. So to say, it's like, if there's a second person, help.
Mhm.
Why, who am I trying to prove it to that I can do it by myself? It's like, they know it. I know it. There's no shame in asking for help.
Mhm. But then oftentimes women find it hard to be assertive in the workplace out of fear of being labeled difficult or dramatic. Where do you find the strength to continue to not only advocate for yourself, but also for your team?
So that I think when they say pick your battles, that
Yeah.
couldn't have been more true. And at least advocate. Let me start with advocating for my team because I think that's the first and foremost one. So obviously, there's a lot of departments in a hotel.
Mhm.
So if there's an issue, with something my team did, or um, maybe something they didn't do, or if something another department keeps breaking and something that we're repetitively having to do, um, and I see my techs sometimes get frustrated that, we're doing the same thing over, that they, maybe another department's just not being careful enough. And I always tell, my team, I said, let me be the bad guy. I don't
Right.
need you starting something with a leader or another department, even if it's like another hourly. I'm like, I'll always say, I said, let me be the bad guy for you.
Mhm.
And I was like, I will be the one. I joke and I said, let me pick the fights. I'm like, let me take care of it. I'm like, you just need to be where you're supposed to be. If I'm asking you to do something, then just do that. I'm like, I don't need you guys getting aggravated. Let me be that barrier for you.
Right.
And I think as far as being assertive and, at least holding my team accountable, I think they know that I'm probably the toughest one. And I don't mean that in a sense of, like, oh, I'm a tough guy. No, they know that I have high expectations. And
Right.
if they're not meeting the expectation I have for them, that they know I will tell them, I will pull them aside, we'll have a conversation. And it's not necessarily a negative conversation all the time. It's more of, hey, I know you're better than this. Like, what's going on?
Mhm.
Why'd you do it this way, maybe instead of something? Because, you did it one way instead of another, and there was a different outcome than that I was expecting. And I'm not always going to be, negative, 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 but I
Right.
need to see what their process was because again, they could have thought something that I wasn't anticipating. And then maybe they saw the solution in a different way than maybe not necessarily what I was guiding them to. And that's fine too. I don't expect I'm not a micromanager. I'm not going to say you have to
Mhm.
do it my way or that. That's unrealistic. That is not being a good leader, truthfully. That that also goes all the way back to creating trust. That
Mhm.
they know I'm not going to micromanage them, but they know if my expectations aren't being met, if that situation that I gave them wasn't done correctly, or there was an error, if just they know I'm going to hold them accountable.
Right.
And
It just sounds like you have a very nurturing approach to leadership, which, like, I know that some people will be like, no, but I think that's kind of the best one because you allow people to grow. It doesn't make them stagnant in their career.
no, exactly. And obviously, if there is not options, but if there is means to discipline, if I have to document, then it's going to be, I'm not going to say for a good reason because it's never a good thing, but it's for a solid reason.
Mhm.
And, I don't want them to get discouraged by getting a document, but sometimes that document needs to happen.
Right.
And even with that, they understand. Because if it's attendance, if it's performance, if I inspected their PM and it wasn't done properly, wasn't done for expectations, I'll always have that first, like a pre-meeting, maybe a warning, just going, hey, what, we're going to talk about this. We're going to have a conversation first before I'll do your next inspection or the next situation that may come. But it's like,
Mhm.
this isn't an acceptable way, this isn't an acceptable outcome or performance, and that just gives like a basis. Just
Right.
like a baseline, it's like, okay, if case, you were unsure about my expectation, I'm giving you my expectation, and then they can go from that. Um,
Mhm.
but I think they do know that, like I said, I think I'm the tougher inspector because again, my expectations are higher. We've
Right.
had people who've been here for so long that I'm not going to say I only expect excellence because that's not realistic. Not everyone can be 100% all the time.
Right.
You know, um, but I think it helps make a stronger team, and
Mhm.
I think they trust that from me. So
Right.
they know that the place I'm coming from, to your point, is a nurturing, is a place of caring. It's like I want to talk to you because I'm caring about your performance. I'm caring about your growth. I want to make sure that you are doing the right thing, that you're learning the right thing, and that you're executing it. Because
Mhm.
we have second shifts when I'm not here. So it's, hey, I want to have that trust that when I'm not here, I know that the building's covered. It's like, no, we got
Right.
someone there. We don't need to worry about, we need to micromanage. Um, so in a way, they know that I can be strict, and I think they actually welcome that with
Yeah.
open arms. Because if they're
Especially
not
in a
being talked to, it's almost like she cares about us. Like she cares about the way we're performing, she cares about the way we're acting. And I think that just, I don't
I
know.
think it means a lot to people, especially just to have a conversation first instead of just like assuming the worst. And people, like, we're all human. We all make mistakes. We have like a lazy day sometimes that are like, or just like life gets in the way. And sometimes that does infiltrate work and our productivity isn't the greatest. So just being able to get on their level and just say like, what's going on? I think that means a lot to people.
Especially when you get to know them. I've been at this property for about 4.5 years. You get to know people's, I'm not going to call it their everyday demeanor, but their baseline on energy, on if they're a smiley person, if they're a talkative person, and just reading their body language and getting to know what their usual is supposed to be, that it's very easy to see when someone is off.
Mhm.
And I think that's what could separate, a manager from a leader is that carrying your team and just going, hey, like, come on, take a seat in my office. Like, let's just have a chat. Just, is everything good? Like, is there anything going on? Are you okay? Um, or even just, yesterday, I saw one of my guys in the back hallway, and I'm like, "Are you good?" And like, "It looks like you got a little bit of a limp going. Like, are you okay?" And he goes, "Yeah, I just hit my knee on the corner of a wall."
Oh,
And it's just something that's like, okay, like I think that's like I kind of said, it separates a leader from manager. It's like you learn your team, they, as corny as it sounds, they become your family. You're at work more time than you're at home. Um, or at least in my case, my husband works on tugboats, so I'm with them way more than I'm around my husband sometimes. So they really become a family, and you learn their demeanors. And even the more quieter people on my team, oh, I love cracking them. I love getting them out of their shell. And there's even there's one guy here, and they're like, he only gets excited around you. You really try to force the best of him out of it and just get
mhm.
him to have fun because, like you, if you have an off day, it's like then that's an off day. But work doesn't automatically mean that you can't have fun.
Right. You should like where you work. I know that's a hot take that I have said before on this podcast, but you should like where you work because if you're miserable, you're just going to put out like crap every day. And facility managers, engineers, you guys are too important to not like where you work because especially in a hotel, if you're not liking it and you put out bad products, someone's going to get hurt. And nobody wants that on their conscience.
No, and I think you even hit it too. It's like, especially in a hotel, we need to be personable. We can be in front of the guests at any given moment. Especially
Mhm.
engineering, we're we're a very flexible or forced to be flexible department because we have stuff in the back of house, we have stuff in the front of house, so we can be in front of guests for anything at any time. And you need to be positive. You can't be looking like a grump in the main lobby while you're, touching up a railing, while you're changing a light bulb. You need to be open. You need to have that energy that make guests feel welcomed.
Mhm.
And that's just part of the Marriott culture. You need to take care of our guests. And that's actually one of the core values of, Marriott is putting people first. So, I take care of our hosts. I make them feel comfortable. I make them feel supported, trusted, and if I can make them laugh to take something off their shoulder to lighten them up a bit, then I know they'll take care of our guests.
Right.
And that's something that one of our core, like I said, the core values, and that's one of them that always sticks with me
Yeah.
because I'm gonna be the first one to stick up for my team, especially if they're, I'm gonna say, in the right. But I'm also gonna be
Mhm.
the first one holding them accountable if I know that what they did was wrong or incorrect. So, and and that's when I tell the guys, I'm like, I will be the one to fight for you. So you do not start the fights. I will start the fights, and I will back you up.
Right.
If you are right, if there's something you did that another department doesn't understand, it's like I will back you up. And you having that trust, it's like I will back you up. So they feel comfortable, and then in the end, it's all about taking care of the guests. So
Yeah.
if they know that I have their back fighting, that's one thing they don't have to worry about. And they can
Mhm.
just be focused on the job at hand, the task at hand, or whatever they're doing in the guest rooms, taking care of the guests, taking care of the lobby. That it's one less thing they have to worry about.
You sound like a very good boss.
I hope so. Thank you.
um, personal experiences or moments in your career that have been particularly empowering or motivating for you?
I am gonna say that honestly, um, it's honestly every day. And I know that sounds so
Oh.
corny. No, and I get that that sounds so corny, but we're a discipline where there's no alike day ever. It's a
Mhm.
very different day, and there's never no big projects going on. So it's a way that you can really feel proud of yourself at the end of the day. And again, I get that sounds totally corny, but if I can leave work thinking, I made a difference today, That
Yeah.
is what really proves it's like I'm here, I'm good in my job. You know, that is something I'm always proud of.
I know that we're running a little short on time, Kat, so I just have one last question for you, and it kind of circles back to being a champion because you're always going to be a champion to me. But what advice would you give to aspiring facility managers who hope to achieve the same level of excellence and recognition in their careers?
I think that's, you know, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to take risks. You know, that's what's going to set you apart is someone who's maybe admitting they don't know something. And that's why I always say you should never be the smartest person in the room. And if you are, you're in the wrong room.
Mhm.
And always ask questions, pick people's brain. They're in a leadership position for a reason, especially if it's questions outside your discipline. Continue to ask questions because they're going to give you a sense of insight that you didn't know, but it could still affect your department, affect the way you think, affect the way you look at a scenario. It's going to make you not second guess, but add that extra level of critical thinking to a problem. It's like, okay, you know, we had a water leak somewhere. What else is going to be affected? Is there a restaurant that's going to be affected? Is there going to be a guest room that's affected? But asking questions, absolutely. And don't be afraid to take risks. What's the worst that can happen? You try something that you never done, and
Mhm.
you have to either learn it or you succeed at it.
Right.
You can either use it as a learning opportunity or you can, be scared of it. So
Right.
there's no harm in continuing to learn.
Right. There's nothing wrong with failing. You can always fail upward. That's one of my favorite things. You just gotta try a little bit. But I think that's great advice, Kat.
Yes.
Well, but thank you so much for joining me today. And for anyone who wants to nominate someone or yourself, I don't really care, for the 2025 Facility Champion Award, the link will be in the show notes. You can also find the information on facilitiesnet.com. The deadline to nominate is June 6th. Thank you all for joining me on your journey through the internet today. We'll be back with season 2 of Facilities in Focus starting June 4th, and I'll see you there. Thank you, Kat.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Facilities in Focus podcast. Facilities in Focus is a product of the facility market, which houses FacilitiesNet, building operating management, facilities maintenance decisions, and healthcare facilities today. Thank you to our sound and video editor, Paul Ellertson. Thank you to Morgan Johnson for designing our logo. Thank you to Dan Melton, Dave Lubach, Dan Hounsell, Jeff Warden, Jill McDermott, and everyone else at Trade Press Media Group. For comments, or if you are interested in being a guest on Facilities in Focus, please email us at fnpodcast@tradepress.com.